All right, all right. So, just going to talk about board and train as a training option. So this subject comes up in waves, on social media and everything. People looking for help with their dog and everything. So, a bunch of Facebook groups, Reddit, just social media in general, even Nextdoor. And the one thing that always comes up is that board and train is it gets a lot of hate. Board and train type programs get a lot of discourse kind of understandably so. A lot of the videos that you see, out there of like a trainer dragging a dog around or, flipping a crate over and spraying water on it or inside of it and everything. It's typically from board and train style programs. Now, what is a board and train? A board and train is the dog is separated from the owner, right? So it would be the dog goes somewhere for X amount of time to get trained, and then the dog returns to the owner trained, hopefully. That's basically what it is. And the other method of training would be individual lessons or private lessons. And so that would be, one-on-ones with the trainer and the handler and everything. And I'm going to go over mainly the board and train concerns and then the benefits, because obviously that's what I do. I mean, I do both. I do private and I do board and trains. I prefer a board and train as a trainer, and I'll explain why. But so for some of the concerns, the owner's not involved. So a lot of people feel like that correlation means that the dog will not work for the owner or that the relationship is going to be different. This is a very valid concern if the trainer doesn't know what they're doing and the trainer doesn't spend time working with the owner after the fact. So that would be one of the big things, is like, you have to, as the trainer, like, you have to work with the owner. There should be a transfer lesson, and there should be a follow-up lesson after that to make sure that everybody's on the same page and everything. I think I go into that, but I have it wrote down for the first time ever just to make sure I stay on track. You don't know how the dog is being trained is another one, and so what people refer to when they say this is, the dog could be, in their mind, being abused to reach a certain goal, or flooded or suppressed or whatever. And these are valid concerns because it's not to go too far into it just in this video, but there are times where flooding and going through the process of learned helplessness is required for the dog. I think I have a video, it might just be a short, of having to do that with a Malinois that had several live bites. It doesn't go through the whole process, it just highlights a clip of like correcting the dog and kind of forcing them into position, I guess. And then there should be videos of how the dog was after the fact, after going through the process, because it's just stages of it. But it is a valid concern because the dog's not with you. You don't know what's going on with the dog. And this is where, like, you really got to spend your time finding and interviewing a reputable trainer. This isn't me trying to gatekeep or anything or feeling like I'm holier than thou and all that, but there's a lot of people out there training, taking money from people that have zero business doing it. And, I understand that everybody has to start somewhere. If the price reflects the level of their skill set, I have no problem with it. If it's disclosed, if the people understand the level of training that they're paying for, that they're getting, totally cool. Now it's two adults making an educated decision. I'm totally cool with that. What I'm not cool with is people charging $5,000 for a 2-week board and train, being like your dog is going to do all this and that. 2 weeks, we're going to go into that, but 2 weeks is not enough time, in my opinion. Can it be done in 2 weeks? Sure, but it's a different relationship with the dog. Like it's a different. There has to be, for most dogs, there has to be a level of excessive, or what I would consider excessive force, and a lot of reliance on punishment, to where the dog's doing something to avoid the punishment instead of doing something because it wants to work with you. There's a huge difference. I think it's too difficult for most dogs to build that relationship in a 2-week time span. Now, my caveat to a 2-week program would be, if that trainer only has like 1 to 3 dogs, 3 might be pushing it, and they are working those dogs like hour on, hour off, hour on, hour off, hour on, hour off, and these dogs are getting, over the span of 2 weeks, a couple hundred hours put on them, then I could be a little bit more understanding of it. However, I'm telling you right now, that's likely not what's happening at all. The dog is probably just getting lured and rewarded with food, and the maintenance and the training is reliable. The training's reliability is shaky at best, and I'll go into that as to why I feel like a longer program is better for not only for the dog, but also, just better overall. So actually I'll just go into it. Find a reputable trainer and facility, interview them, talk to them. Things to ask are kind of like, hey, where are the dogs kept? Hey, do you have a demo dog? If you don't have a demo dog, because I do have a demo dog, but I don't use her all that time because I hardly have time to maintain her. Well, I have 2 demo dogs, but yeah, I don't. They're usually off doing something else. But if they don't have a demo dog, and it's okay, it's totally okay and understandable if a trainer does not have a demo dog. And the reason for that is because, so like for me, I'll just give myself as an example. It's very, very difficult for me to maintain my own dogs because I have so many other dogs I'm training. So it's kind of like, I kind of view it as like the car mechanic. Their car is usually the last one to get maintained because they're too busy working on everybody else's stuff. It's kind of the same way here. Now, newer trainers, it's easier for them to maintain a demo dog because they're hunting for clients. And that's cool. There's a couple things to understand with a demo dog though. What is the demo dog? If it's a Malinois, I'm not going to be impressed, just because Mals are just super easy and super biddable for basic obedience stuff. That's just my opinion. Most working breeds are. So like working line Shepherds, Dutches, Mals, very biddable collies. Like if your trainer's demo dog is a border collie and you're like, oh my gosh, that's what I'm expecting my dog to be like, dude, stop. It's not going to be like that. Border collies are pre-programmed from birth to do whatever. Like it's like you say a word and they already understand what it means. It's cheating. So if they don't have a demo dog, ask to see them work just for a few minutes, just to have them take out or whatever a dog that is currently in their program. Now, if you're going to a training facility, this should be an absolute. They should jump to their feet and be like, absolutely, I'll go grab one. I'll go grab one that's been here for 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week, whatever. They should have access to a dog that is currently in the program. And there's a couple things I would want you to watch for. How does the dog interact with the trainer? Now, that's a big one, but there's a caveat to that. How long has the dog been in the program? I do not expect the relationship to be great in the first 2 weeks with the trainer. However, Just because of that, and that's just because of the stress levels. Like the dog is away from the home and everything. It's probably in a kennel environment. There's a lot of outside pressure coming on from the other dogs and everything. I do expect a dog that early in the program, in the first week or so, to just be overwhelmed and is still adjusting. So take that with a grain of salt. Now, if you have a dog that's been there, that's there for the third or fourth week, and the relationship with the trainer just looks like that dog is being suppressed, I would question. I would say, hey, why is the dog like that? Now, if that dog has live bites, or the dog has a genetic disorder or something, or is on medication, take those things into consideration. But when the dog is freed up and the dog is on break and everything, what's the relationship with the trainer? How does the trainer interact with the dog? That's something that you should consider. So take what that trainer is doing right in front of you and cut that in half. And that's probably what's happening to your dog when you're not there and there's no eye in the sky and nothing's being viewed. Like, it's a show, man. I promise you it's a show. It's just like that car salesman. Like, oh yeah, dude, this car is great. It's gonna last 500,000 miles. Oh my gosh, it's the best. And then you run into him 6 months later, outside of the dealership, and they're like, oh yeah, dude, those cars are crap. Like, dude, we've always known that. Those things are garbage. Oh my gosh, you actually bought that thing? Ew. So take what the trainer's doing in front of you and cut it at least in half. I think that's a good middle ground point. I'm not saying that's every trainer. I'm just saying this is just an umbrella information to like what I would expect, Let's see. Yes. And how does the dog act with the trainer? Yada, yada. Also, like, as a trainer, I would require, so like, and this is just like, as a trainer talking to another trainer, I would be like, what have you done to maximize your own personal dog? Like, have you ever maximized the dog, and what did that look like? A good trainer will know what that means. So, like, this is, okay, actually, maybe this is the question you should ask your trainer is like, hey, what have you done to maximize the dog? And what did it look like? If a trainer does not know what it means to maximize a dog, then it's probably not somebody that you would want to spend money with if it's a high amount. So like if you're having questions on price and you're kind of like, this kind of seems like a lot, I want to make sure I'm getting my money's worth. If the trainer does not know or does not know how to maximize a dog, then I would consider moving on. What it means to maximize a dog is it means to take the dog to its highest genetic ability, right? So to maximize their genetics, that's what it means to maximize a dog. You do not get this with pet dogs, with pet training that often. I would say it's a rarity. And the only reason that you would be able to maximize that dog in pet training is because the dog's threshold is so incredibly low that pet training is maxing that dog out. So things that I would look for is I'd be like, hey, if let's say I was asked that as another trainer, I'd be like, oh yeah, well, I've titled dogs in IGP. I've, done search and rescue, cadaver, service dogs and everything. I've maximized the dogs to their genetic ability and bite work, obedience, tracking, things like that. Like there's a slew, there's a variety of things that I've been able to teach mastery to different dogs. And that's what I would expect as an answer. Just because a trainer has not titled a dog, in like PSA, IGP, whatever, does not mean they're bad and does not mean they're not worth money. It's just, a lot of it comes down to a time thing. So like I don't actively compete because of time. I have to run this business. I don't have time to compete. Do I still work my dogs on IGP? Yeah, I do for fun, you know, just like I'll take him out and we'll go do some stuff or whatever. But I'm not expecting a trainer to have the time to be able to train their dog to compete, because it takes so much time that there's just either they cap themselves at a number of dogs to where they can actively continue doing so, which happens, but it's not very many dogs. I would say it's like maybe a couple at a time, you know, to where we're anywhere between 15 and 20 monthly. Sorry, just the dogs are barking. Just making sure there's nobody. I have a full view of the driveway, so or the parking lot, whatever. All right, so benefits. The benefits to board and train as a trainer, to me, I feel like they outweigh the benefits of individual training, of private lessons. And that opinion does change depending on the dog and depending on the handler. So it depends on the relationship that the dog has with their owner, and it depends on how the owner handles their dog, what they do. My first benefit to board and train is going to be more effective and efficient progress. So with a good trainer, those training sessions are going to be efficient and very effective. And the progress starts to snowball. So obviously, we all know, progress is probably slow in the beginning. You know, whatever, you're not looking for a clear understanding. What you're doing is you're laying the groundwork for everything. And so you kind of start laying everything out, and then you start building it up to a peak. And that peak is the clear understanding of what it is you're asking from the dog. One of the biggest differences between a professional trainer and your run-of-the-mill handler, your regular owner, your regular pet dog owner, is going to be timing and consistency. And what those things do is they leave less chance for confusion or more chance for confusion. So it's difficult for regular owners to be consistent on their markers, be consistent with their commands, which is still a marker. And, you know, their timing is usually terrible. And that inconsistency in timing creates confusion with the dog. So that also goes into why the progress is more effective and efficient, is because there's more clarity, right? So the 3 C's are confidence, clarity, and consistency, right? So like, that's what I made up for my training program. What's slogan or whatever years and years ago was consistency, clarity, and confidence, because confidence is built from clarity and consistency, and consistency builds clarity. And that's really what you want for the full picture to get an understanding, are those 3 things. So, and that's different than proofing. Proofing is distance, duration, distraction, right? So like 3 C's and 3 D's. But anyway, the clear understanding helps maximize the dog. Now, you're not going to maximize the dog to like a sport level or whatever, but you can maximize them in the pet dog sense. You know, I say heel, the dog comes with me. I'm sorry, I'm just wondering why the dogs are losing it. I recall, like, here, come, and the dog comes, the dog does its thing, it's all good. I say sit, the dog sits. I say down, the dog downs. I say place, the dog runs to the placement and stays there. Like, these are maximized things for, a pet dog. I am not going to be like, foos. We're going, couche, and the dog goes into a down, and then I walk half a mile away, and then I come back to the dog, and the dog's still there. I'm not going to expect that out of a pet dog, all right, in the amount of time of a board and train. Can you do it? Sometimes you can. Should it be expected? Absolutely not. It's just because it's just like one of those things that that takes a lot of time to build up in a dog. Like you can't just teach a dog a down and then expect them to do a 10-minute down stay. Like it's just it's a little much. You're asking a little much from the dog. Some dogs will absolutely do it. And it depends on really what the dog is there for. Like most of the dogs that come in, if they're not young pups, then they're coming in for behavior modification. Like there's something that needs to be done to change what's going on with the dog and how the dog behaves. And that goes into the next part. If there is protest in the training process and the dog is willing to put up a fight to do what it wants to do, the owner does not have to navigate that themselves, right? So this is one of the biggest reasons or the biggest benefits for board and train is there's a lot of times, especially with the older dogs or like, you know, the 2, 3, 4-year-olds or the dogs coming into their adolescent delinquency stage, a lot of times those dogs will start to protest when their freedom is being guided in another direction, right? Or their freedom is being taken away. Like now there's boundaries. Now there's these there's these walls around what it is that they want to do because we're trying to channel them into what we need them to do. So my examples of that would be like leash reactivity, dog reactivity, just reactivity in general, or you saying come and the dog going off and doing its own thing. Like all of those things, once you start to take that away or you start to redirect them, there will be a point of protest depending on how you go about it. If you want a reliable way of doing it, then yes, there's probably going to be protest because you're basically telling the dog, you're showing the dog, you can no longer do this. The dog is like, but that's what satisfies me. That's what I want to do, or that's what he thinks he wants to do. And then you start to take that away. There's protest because now the dog doesn't know what to do in place of it. So that's what we have to show them. That's what training is. So I think that's a big one. The owner doesn't have to navigate the protest, and the trainer's not going to let the dog win the protest. Most of the time, the owner is going to let the dog win unknowingly. I've had dogs where they've protested over a sit for 3-4 hours. Like I'll be up here or outside for 4 hours with that dog, going over it until the dog finally gives in and the dog finally does it, and then we celebrate, right? And then we celebrate it. We pop champagne because we're like, dang, dude, that was 4 hours. Now it's dark out and whatever. The big thing about situations like that is you can't fold. Like you can't stop because the dog wants to stop. And that's the benefit of a board and train, is because the trainer, a good one, will not stop, but they have the time and the knowledge to work through that process with the dog, to where as an owner, you could be like, oh yeah, I work from home, I've got the time. Okay, well now your dog's in full protest mode and now you got to go pick up the kids, or you got to start dinner, or you got a phone call. Like you got all these things that can now distract you and take you away from the dog. And now the dog wins. That dog takes that W, and now next time it's going to be way harder. It's going to be way more protest because now the dog is digging in their heels and they're committed now because they're like, dude, I won last time. What makes me think I'm not going to win again? And this is where the fight escalates, right? And so back to the example of that Malinois video, that Malinois always won. Always. That dog was 4 years old or something? Or maybe it was 2. I can't remember. It's been a while now. But anyway, that dog had always won every time it had put up a fight. And so every time it does that, it reinforces itself in that behavior or in that action. And now it becomes much, much more difficult down the road and to change because it becomes habit. Right. Anyway. You can now vacuum your house. So that's a benefit, right? No hair. You can vacuum and it's all good. That one was supposed to be a joke, but it's true. A lot of people do bring that up when they come pick the dog up. They're like, oh, the house was so clean. I vacuumed and the hair stayed gone. It was awesome. So it is a thing. Obviously, depending on the dog and the shedding, but deal with a lot of shepherds here, so they shed. The other thing too, and this is another one of the huge benefits of it, and it's one of those things that gets contested so much between private lessons or owner trained lessons and board and train. And that is, in my view, as somebody that's been doing this for a long time, it is easier to teach the handler how to reinforce what has been done, like what the expectations of the command are, than it is to teach you how to teach the command and then how to reinforce. So you're taking part of the learning process out, right? And all I need you to do is understand how to reinforce whatever behavior or whatever action, whatever command, because the dog now has a clear understanding. So it's less stressful on the dog, it's less stressful on the owner. Okay, and now they can go into this relationship of, I say this, you do this. Oh my gosh, it's awesome, it's great. We don't have to go through the protest stage. We don't have to go through the teaching, breaking down the exercise, how to get the dog to do it, all this and that. We don't have to go through luring and then going into reinforcing with a collar correction and then removing the food and all we don't have to go through all this. We don't have to go through having to add distraction, duration, and distance and all this to proof and understanding. All of that is already done, right? So there's a whole lot of work that is done behind the scenes that the owner doesn't have to worry about. Now, and I'm saying this is what my expectations would be like. As a trainer, this is what I do, okay? And I'm probably one of the few out there that do it the way that I do. I put a ton of time into my dogs. Now, my situation is also different than others. I have the ability to put all this time into these dogs because I live here. I live 50 feet from my training hall. Okay, so I am with my dogs all day and into the evening. And it depends, like in the summer I can go a lot later, but because it gets so dark in the winter, I'm not with the dogs as frequent as long, but I also have less dogs, right? So it evens out. I have less dogs in training in winter. I have more dogs in boarding. And that's just because people are traveling and everything, so. But some other trainers that are doing it out of their home or whatever, they don't have that available time necessarily. Like out of the home, you should have a lot more time. But it also depends on how many dogs are there too and what family life is like and everything, so it just kind of depends. But I think a good trainer is going to put hours per dog or into the dog, hours per day into the dog, right? And it also depends on what the dog can handle, how much the dog can do. So the other big thing is there should be lessons after the fact. So what we do is what we call a transfer of authority lesson, right? So this is where we show you what the dog does. Okay, we show you heel, sit, down, stay is implied, wait at the door, place, the recall, just basic mannerisms, off and hush and things like that, kennel or whatever. And we show you this. We show you that, hey, your dog understands these things, okay? Now I'm going to hand you the leash, and now for the next hour and a half to 2 hours, sometimes longer, we coach you on how to handle the dog, how to issue proper corrections, how to work on the timing and things like this. And we make it, and we sit there and we coach you for an hour and a half. Let me tell you, an hour of straight being coached nonstop because the dog already understands these things, is so much more efficient and so much more effective. Now, it is a lot of information to take in one session. Absolutely understand that. So what we do is we do that transfer lesson, yada, yada. The dog works for the people. Oh my gosh, awesome, great. Now we tell you to go home, because the dog most of the time will revert when they go back home, because they're like, oh dude, I had this set of rules over here, and now I'm back home, I have my set of rules over here. And the dog will try to go back to what they were doing before, depending on the age of the dog, obviously. But, so if there were habit behaviors that were a problem at home, and that's why you brought them in for training, the dog is probably going to test their ability and be like, let me see what happens if I do it here, right? Like maybe it's different. And then that's where the reinforcement comes in. So we have you come back in 2 to 4 weeks. We really, really, really shoot for 2 weeks, no more than 4. But I understand, especially this time of year, it's been like a month and a half since one of my training dogs went home, or I don't know if I did a video with him. I don't think I did. It was a little golden retriever puppy, but they couldn't come in for their properly timed refresh lesson because of the holidays. They're traveling, this and that. And so sometimes things happen, but between 2 to 4 weeks. And the reason for that is because within that 2-week span, the dog is going to be decompressed. They're going to be comfortable back home, and they're going to start exploring with behaviors, because it's just what a dog does. The dog will always choose the path of least resistance. So if you are letting up on something, or the dog is starting to do things that you don't like and you don't know how to correct it, come back. We have you write down all the things all the questions that you have and things that you're having problems with, or what the dog is exhibiting. And then we focus on those things for another 2-hour session. After that, lessons have a charge, okay? And it's just charged as a private lesson. However, inquiries over text and phone or whatever, that stays free until a problem gets to a level to where it's like, all right, we need you to come in, we need to do a private lesson, right? So like, you need to have a trainer that's going to be available. So that's very hard to judge, but usually it's facilities that are going to be there, not somebody that just started training dogs a year or 2 ago, and you shouldn't expect them to be there in 5-6 years. Like, that's just not how it is. With us, we've been around for over 30 years, so you can kind of expect us to be here. We put our hundreds of thousands of dollars into our facility annually, so like, you can see the investment going in. You can expect projected longevity. A lot of facilities you can do that with, and it kind of depends. And we're family owned and operated, right? So like, that's another thing too, is the family, taking over, or the next in succession, are they taking over? You should be able to expect another 30, 40 years or whatever out of whoever's taking over. So it just depends. It is very hard to find a good trainer. There's lots of trainers out there that mean well and want to help you and want to do well. I would say, give them a fair shake. But at the same time, just because somebody is passionate about training does not mean they are good at training. There are people that are very good with dogs, and there are people that are very good with people. There are very few that are good with both. And in my opinion, it takes both to be a very good and successful trainer. But, it is what it is. It takes time to develop the skill set for both, because it's one thing to teach a dog, it's another to teach the people. And learning is one thing, application is another. And that's where mentoring and everything comes in and stuff like that to be built up as a good trainer. So, but those are my things for board and train. I am a huge advocate of board and train. A lot of times it's easier on the dog when the owner is removed, but it depends on the relationship. It depends. I don't push everybody into board and train. I do private lessons. And my whole thing with private lessons is the people have to understand and know that whatever your goal is likely is going to take a lot longer, because we're doing it in individual lessons. Okay, so depending on where the people are, I would like to see them at least once a week. I have a guy that drives down from a couple hours away every weekend, and we do that, and that's what he enjoys. That's what works for him, and it's because he's also got to take that several hour drive to get here. Other people, if they're closer in the area, I might have them come up a couple times a week, but it depends on everybody's schedule. So once a week is minimum. If it starts to skip weeks before we have a decent foundation laid out, then I stop. It's just not fair to the dog. Because now, let's say they come back 3 weeks later, we have to start back at baseline. I got to make sure that, you've been doing your homework. And if you haven't been doing your homework, then, then we start back over. And that's the other thing too, is like, the problem with private lessons is if the owner or the owner handler does not do the homework, does not work on the reinforcement and work on progression and everything, you're wasting your money. You are wasting less money. I understand that. Like, my private lessons are significantly cheaper than a board and train. That's because if you put in the work that I don't have to do, it should not have to cost you as much. So I charge $150 an hour at the time of this video. And that is a comparable rate to the area. There are people that have far less experience than I do, charging the same, if not more. I do that because whatever, it's fine for me. I don't really mind. And my board and train is cheaper as well my board and train is cheaper than the national average. I'll just leave it at that. The national average for a four-week board and train is $4,000. $1,000 a week is the national average for a board and train. I'm way less than that. I'm way less than that because I have the ability to do volume, because I have multiple trainers. And so that's just how we do it. We feel like training should be affordable. Training shouldn't be something that only wealthy people or people with excess disposable income are able to afford. Now, that's just us, whatever. We've been doing well. Could I increase my prices and keep the amount of dogs the same and be driving a Lambo? Absolutely. Will it have to get to that point sometime in the future if we get too busy? Sure. You get too busy, you have to increase your prices. But we're, right now working with the county to build another, 100-foot building. So, as far as that goes, if we can maintain it and bring on more people, and we can still have this working relationship with everybody, and the dogs aren't falling through the cracks, then the prices don't need to change. Of course, now if a dog is coming into my home and I'm training it, the price is quite a bit more. But I only do 1 or 2 of those a month, and that's because it takes up all my time. For reasons as said in this video, like, I'm not training most of these board and train dogs, right? So you should see, as well as another question to ask is, how many dogs is this trainer training? Anything over 10 for one person, anything over 10 dogs for one person is max. And that is coming, one of my mentors, we discussed this number at length. First, we were at like 6. 6 dogs is, anything more than 6 is too much for one trainer. And then, we talked about it for a while and everything. And it's like, if you are supremely dedicated and you are putting like 12 hours a day into these dogs, 10 is a good max. And I would see how many dogs your trainer is working a month and everything, and see. So we do 15 to 20 dogs a month split between 3 trainers, right? So that's the way we do it. Is I usually work afternoon, evenings with the dogs, and then my other trainer works in the mornings or whatever. And then when we have clients and everything, we have another trainer, boom, come in and take those dogs and do stuff. So, all right. So that's that. If you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I will get to addressing them, because it is a topic that should be discussed, and it should be openly discussed. Like, you should know from people in the industry, from people that do this, what are the downsides to board and trains? What are the downsides to privates? Like, what are the downsides to whatever it is you're looking to spend your money on? Because there are always downsides. All right. As much as we like everything to be fluffy and great and good, there's going to be a trade-off somewhere. It may not be a bad trade-off, but there's going to be a trade-off, right? So anyway, leave your questions below and I'll try and get to them with another video or whatever. All right, later.